Hi, I'm Todd Nauck. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So for today's art video, what we're going to do here is a post-it note sketch here of the Hulk. Hulk on a green post-it note. Should be a lot of fun. And it'll be full pencil, inked, and colored drawing. And I'll list the tools that I use throughout the video. But what I'll do this time is a Q&A. These are questions that I have collated from my Instagram account, which you can follow me on Instagram. Just search Todd Nauck. And we're going to address some questions here while I draw. So just going to try something a little different than my usual art videos, and hopefully we'll have a lot of fun. So let's flip the camera around. Let's get to drawing. Okay, so let's dive into Instagram and see what questions were submitted. So let's see. We got one here from @FutureMangaArtist. Are there any tips getting a job as a comic artist? I get a lot of questions very similar to this. In fact, a lot of people posted questions similar to this. So this one question will hopefully address all those similar questions. Probably my tips about getting into drawing comics for a living would be learn how to do sequential art. That's the panel-to-panel storytelling pages that you would read in a comic book. You need to learn how to do that. And that's not an easy task. It takes a lot of time to learn how to do that. And to get proficient at it to a point where an editor is willing to hire you. So keep practicing that, study how comics are drawn. That's what I did as a kid. I'd look at my favorite comics, study how my favorite comic book artists would arrange their panels, how they would arrange their camera angles and shots, and how they'd fill the detail in there, which panels used backgrounds, which panels had less or no backgrounds, and kind of learn the science of it by reverse engineering it. So get better at, continue to study and get better at your figure work, your drawing, your movement of the figures, your placement of your figures in your environment, as well as drawing an environment itself, drawing the backgrounds, learning perspective, learning lighting, and how to draw clothing, as well as superhero costumes, and just everything. That's the thing about being a comic book artist. You have to learn how to draw everything that exists, plus everything that you can imagine and create, whether you're drawing alien or fantasy worlds on top of that. So it takes a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. I find it very rewarding. Now, once you've gotten pretty adept at drawing sample pages or drawing comic books, you can even do your own creator-owned stuff. Is a great way to practice your comic book drawing skills. That's why I did, was doing my creator-owned type stuff as a kid, as a high schooler, and a college student. Take your sequential art pages, whether they be Marvel or DC comic samples, or your creator-owned stuff, and get to conventions that have publishers exhibiting there. See if you can meet up with an editor. Sometimes you can go up to the booth and ask if there are editors doing portfolio reviews. Some publishers will state on their social media for a specific con, we will have editors at this area at this time doing portfolio reviews. It all depends on the convention, the size of the convention, which publishers are there, but have your portfolio and materials ready so that when you go to the convention, you have something to show. Always have something to show. You don't want to miss out an opportunity. So have something, even if it's 3 pages of Spider-Man samples or Batman samples. At least you have that. And an editor doesn't need to see a lot to determine where an artist is at, because they see a lot of artwork coming across. So you don't need to fill up a portfolio of 20 to 40 pages. Just have 3 to 5 pages. If you have a short story of your creator-owned character, show that. That's okay, because they're going to see, can you draw? Can you tell a story? Can you create an experience? So those would be probably some of the tips I would give about breaking into the world of comic books. All right, our next question is from Liam Bather 10. And Liam asks, what kind of inking and drawing tools do you use? Stay tuned to this video, Liam. You're going to see that I've listed each tool that I've used in illustrating this shot of the Hulk. The pencils, the pens, those are what I use not only for these type of sketches, commission art, I also use them for my professional comic book work as well. I will be coloring this with Copic Sketch markers later on, but I do not use Copic Sketch markers in my comic book work, just strictly for my convention pieces and pieces I do for fun. All right, this next question is from AndyMan45, and Andy asks, what was the first thing you drew? Let's see, the first thing I can remember drawing, which was, and my earliest memories are of drawing as a little kid, And aside from just random scribbling, I would say at age 3, the first drawing I remember doing was scribbling in a circle saying hamburger, hamburger, hamburger. So I am going off of what I can remember from all those years ago, that at 3 years old I was drawing a picture of a hamburger. So the first thing I remember drawing, hamburger. All right, so Comic Kalo, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, asks, can you recommend a practice exercise to improve on placing shadows in drawings? My initial recommendation would be take an object. Take a simple object like maybe a ball, or like a ball or a bowl or a teacup. These are the types of things you would do in early stage 1 kind of drawing or illustration classes. You might do them in a junior high or high school art class and like in the first semester. These are kind of some basics, but the basics can be they're foundational, so it's always good to use these for practice. Set that on a table and then put a lamp, a desk lamp or whatever sort of light, maybe a flashlight, angled on one side of that object, and study where the light is hitting that object and where the shadow is and where the shadow is on the table. So the shadow on the object and the shadow on the table, and you may even notice some reflected light on that shadow side of the object. Render that now. Get your sketchbook and render that ball, render that teacup, render that bowl. Pick a simple shape to start off with. Do these types of objects. Then you can move up to more detailed type objects. Maybe you can do a shoe or, I don't know, a Pop Funko figure, something like that. So that's a way to kind of study how to shade a character with a direct light source, and then this will play into your figure work or any other object you might be drawing in a scene, because a figure is made up of a lot of circles and cylinders. And so if you know how to shade a ball, then you would know how to shade the shoulder or the bicep of a muscle, or the skull or the back of the head, or the jawline, the nose, things like that. So that would be my tip on how to practice placing shadows in your drawings. All right, this next question is from Nathaniel Hayashi Art, and Nathaniel asks, who inspired you as a kid? So let's see, my inspiration as a kid when I started getting really into drawing, and more specifically comic book type drawing, when I realized I wanted to be a comic book artist, that's when I was really started to be inspired by the artists that I was growing up reading their comics, and a lot of those were some X-Men artists. So I consider my foundational 4 influences, or inspirations I should say, as well, it would be Arthur Adams, Rick Leonardi, Walter Simonson, and Alan Davis. But there are so many other artists I can list beyond that, like Mark Silvestri, Brett Blevins, John Bogdanov, Mike Zeck, Todd McFarlane, Eric Larson, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Umberto Ramos. The list just goes on and on. In fact, if you go follow me on Instagram, you can click on the people that I follow, and you'll notice most of them are artists, and I find all these artists to be very inspirational, and it's fun to see their work show up in my feed and how they inspire me even to this day. So, but as a kid, I would say those first 4 are the ones that were my initial strongest inspirations. Okay, so Sketching Comics posted this question. At what age did you begin selling your art, and how much did you begin selling your art for? I would say technically the first time I started selling my art was mini comics I would make. I'd make these mini comics of my creator-owned characters when I was a freshman in high school. That's when I realized I wanted to be a comic book artist. And I started making these homemade mini comics I would print on a Xerox copy at a copier at my mom's work, and then I'd staple them together, and they were maybe 5 or 6 page, 8 page stories. So it only took 3 sheets of paper, folded in half, and I'd print them out and then staple them and sell the copies to my friends at high school. And so this was back in the 1980s, mind you. So I sold my comics for, I think, 25, 50 cents a piece. So I'd walk away making about $1, $2 per comic. So wasn't a lot of money, but actually, a Marvel or DC comic book cost about 75 cents to $1 back in the 80s. So I was able to make enough money to buy a couple of comics each time, and I was just having fun creating comics. So the fact that I would have even a few friends that would want to buy my comics, that actually meant a lot. So I went to a really small Texas high school, so there wasn't a lot of students there to begin with, so there wasn't a big selling market. But that was the first time I started selling my artwork technically. And so yeah, started at 25 to 50 cents. You might want to adjust for inflation here 30 plus years later. Okay, so Tricky2 posted this one here. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Now, I know this is a very controversial kind of question. There are a lot of people in the hot dog camp. There are a lot of people in the sandwich camp, and it can get pretty heated with the debate about this. Me personally, I consider a sandwich any form of meat in between two pieces of bread. So technically, I would have to say a hot dog is in the sandwich family, though I would never say, could I get a hot dog sandwich? Maybe they called it hot dog sandwiches way back in the day, like because sometimes you'll see like a 1950s, 60s movie, like early 1960s movie, the kind they show on Mystery Science Theater, and they refer to hamburgers as hamburger sandwiches and French fried potatoes. So if they called hamburgers hamburger sandwiches back in the 50s, at least maybe in some areas of the country, maybe they called hot dogs hot dog sandwiches at some point in history, and we just over time dropped the word sandwich. But it sure seems like a hot dog would fit into the sandwich family. Share your opinions in the comments below. So this next question is from Mod Draws 100s. How do you get better at drawing bodies, heads, etc.? So for me, starting out as a kid, it was just, I would get better just by the repetition. The more you draw, the better chance you have at getting better, because it's just that continued daily practice, which can be kind of slow going, but you just do it because you have fun drawing. It wasn't until I started attending art school. I went to the Art Institute of Dallas in the early 90s, and I had at least 5 semesters of life drawing. And so, I had actual life drawing instruction, which helped a lot. And my instructor taught from the figure drawing artist / author Bern Hogarth. So that's where I learned from, Bern Hogarth Dynamic Anatomy. But you can also look at there are other life drawing author / artists, George Bridgman and Andrew Loomis. So these guys, are you can look them up, look up their books and see what appeals to you. But I would say, it's just continued study and practice, and just repeating that over and over and over again. That's how I did it. That's how I'm doing it. That's about the best advice I can give. Let's see. This question is from YB5150, and YB asks, have you tried to create your own character for any given universe you've worked in before? Let's see. I have co-created characters for different DC comics and Marvel comics I have drawn. I have not really submitted a character that was completely mine, unsolicited. The editor didn't say, hey Todd, do you have any characters you want to throw in here? But I have had to create characters for different stories we've done. Like when I was doing Young Justice, I created I should say I co-created, I came up with the visuals for Secret and Empress and Harm and the teenage version of Lobo, and then when he morphed into Slobo. So characters like that. In Spider-Man, I've co-created a character called Nurse Arrow, who was later to be revealed part of the Other, in that whole The Other storyline back in the early 2000s. And any other? Let's see. What I'm just trying to think of. I created in Nightcrawler. I got to create a couple of New Mutants with Chris Claremont, Rico the Scorpion Boy and Ziggy Karst, which was really fun to do as a big X-Men / New Mutants fan. Being able to create a couple of New Mutants with legendary X-Men writer Chris Claremont really meant a lot. But as far as my characters that I created and that I own, I have not submitted them to a publisher like Marvel or DC to insert them into their universe. I am continually creating my personal universe, which is the Wild Guard universe, which is a book I did as a creator-owned project at Image Comics, which was a 12-issue series, and hopefully maybe more Wild Guard stories to come. Let's see. Okay, this next question is from Tyrion Bannister. Tyrion posted, do you have any tips on how to apply less pressure on paper? I don't know why I'm doing it, and it ruins my drawings for me. Well, Tyrion, learning how to apply less pressure, or as we like to call, be less heavy-handed, have more of a light touch, is really, for me, to develop that lighter touch, it was, I had to develop like the mindset to do it. Like I had to consciously think, don't press down hard. I had to practice not pressing down as hard. And that was pretty much the best I knew to do at that time, is just continually reminding myself as I'm drawing. And it's kind of frustrating to have to do that, to keep thinking, stop bearing down, don't be heavy-handed. But the more I did it, and it started to develop into that lighter touch, and to a point where I've trained my brain and my arm and my eyes to all work together in a way where it wasn't so heavy-handed. And it just takes time to do that. So it takes conscious thought until it becomes second nature. I wish I had an easier answer there for you, but I wish you all the best with your art. Keep trying to draw with that lighter touch, and keep practicing it. Keep thinking about it to a point where you've thought about it so much you don't even have to think about it anymore, because you've made it second nature. All right, so this question from Blueberry Banff. Have you ever painted with acrylics or oils, and if so, which do you prefer? The only time I can recall working with oils was in an after-school art program I was in 4th grade. And, it was very rudimentary, because, I was, 9 years old, maybe 10 years old. So I remember it being quite challenging even at that age for a very simple painting. So yeah, not familiar with working with oils. And I haven't really done a lot of work with acrylic paints, though I have been encouraged. My friend Rod Reese, illustrator Rod Reese, who does his paintings with acrylics, has encouraged me to try that. He thinks I might like it based on the work I've done with watercolor. It's just, I think I have a lot to learn there in how to paint with acrylics, and maybe someday I will teach myself how to do that, but no plans to do that at this time, because I have so many other projects and different types of things I'm working on right now that I do not have the time to devote to learning acrylics, at least at this very moment. Who knows what the future might hold, maybe sooner than later, but yeah, definitely something I would consider, at least with acrylics, maybe not oils here initially. And Blueberry Banff also asks, have I ever tried to eat an orange like an apple? And this is a really great question. No, I have never tried to bite right into an orange like I would an apple. The peeling of an orange, the orange rind, doesn't seem like a pleasant flavor experience for me. Just based on my experience of peeling an orange. And sometimes you get that little white stuff, that inner part of the peeling that's kind of stuck to the orange, depending on how ripe or unripe the orange is. And I hate that part, because it just feels like it's keeping me away from the fleshy orange fruit itself. So just based on that alone, the orange peeling doesn't sound too appealing. I did not mean for that to be a pun, but I'm going to stick with it. Let's see, we have a question here from Kyle Doctor. Kyle posted, when you get frustrated or stuck on a piece, what do you do to get back on track? Yes, common thing for any artist, because every artist is a human. We don't always do everything perfectly. Sometimes we have frustrating moments or things we get stuck on. So when I'm working on a piece, if I get frustrated or stuck, I'm usually in the initial sketch stage, the layout stage. I'm trying to put the puzzle together that I will then build with the pencil art and then the inked art. And you might see, if you've seen many of my videos here, I start off with a really rough kind of sketch breakdown. And usually that's where things get frustrating, if I can't get the arm just right, or the pose just right, or maybe the facial expression just right. So I've come to learn, take a break. Take a moment to step away, have a snack, take a walk, come back with a fresh eye, and maybe then I'm able to see where my problem is. Or maybe I'm just kind of reset the system and I'm able to just kind of move right through that problem area. Maybe I need to study something. Maybe I need to research a technique or a specific reference for, maybe it's like the pose of the arm is in just a certain way that I'm frustrated. Maybe I need to see if there's a photo of it. Maybe I need to take a photo of my own arm in that way. I'll give the camera to my wife and say, take a photo of me from this angle with my arm outstretched, because I need to see how the muscles fit together and work just right, so I can get this angle just right. So sometimes that is the trick there. So either taking a break or looking into getting the knowledge that I need so I can overcome this challenge, level up my skills, and then hopefully have a new bit of information in my art arsenal, so that if I ever encounter this challenge again, I can hopefully meet it and achieve it a little easier than I did the previous time. And I wish you all the best, Kyle, with your art and any other like frustrating moments you might encounter. All right, so we have a question here from Chow Barreto, and Chow posted, what did you feel when Marvel called you to make your first comics for them? Technically, my first paid published work for Marvel was when I was still in art school. I was 21 years old, and I got to do a one-page X-Men gag for their humor comic book called What The? And I actually met the editor at the convention. I showed her my portfolio. I'd met her a couple of times at these Dallas conventions over the course of the previous year. So by this time, she had seen me grow in my art. She was willing to take a chance on me. So I actually got my first assignment face to face. You know, she looked at me and she said, send me some sketch ideas and I'll purchase one gag off of you. So I drew them up, mailed them out to her in New York City, and a few weeks later, and then she called me up and said, okay, of what you've sent me here, I like these two X-Men ones, put them together on one page and we'll run it in a future issue of What The? And that ended up being the back cover to issue What The? Back cover of What The? Issue 21, I should say. And so that was my first paid published work, was for Marvel. So, and an X-Men piece, and I'm a huge X-Men fan. So that's will forever be a feather in my cap there. So yeah, I felt so excited. I was just over the moon. Couldn't believe that I finally, after going to so many conventions, getting so many critiques, that there was an editor that was willing to take a chance on me. And there was still, I still had a ways to go before I was working in the industry full time, but it was my first step into a larger world. Okay, so we have one more question here from N. Schoper. How long do you spend on an artwork and how many hours do you spend at a time? It all depends on the piece of art that I'm doing. Usually when I'm doing comic books, I average about one full day doing comic book artwork, getting a page done of sketch pencils and inks, and that can be anywhere from an 8 to 12 hour work day. And I tend to work 5 to 6 days a week at least, sometimes 7 if it's a heavy deadline, but usually 5 or 6 days. And so yeah, I work anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a week drawing comics. But if I'm doing a smaller illustration, like you see here with this Post-it note, this one took me about 25 minutes to draw, and anything larger than that, then it takes a little bit more time, into half an hour, 3 hours, or like I say, it's spending a whole work day. So that's what I do with my time. All right, there we go. The Hulk, drawn on a Post-it note. So much fun to do, and I hope you had fun watching me draw. If you liked what you saw, please leave me a thumbs up. Hopefully you enjoyed the Q&A. Did you like this Post-it note Q&A sort of format here? I'd like to do more because it's fun to be able to address your questions in this way. And so let me know in the comments below if this is a feature you'd like to see me continue to do. And feel free to leave your question in the comments below, and maybe I'll use one of your questions in future Post-it note Q&As. And if you'd like to see something that's a bit more instructional, where I share kind of my tips and tricks while I'm drawing, check out this video and this playlist here. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe and set your notifications to remind you when I'm posting new videos or live streams. And look forward to seeing you again real soon. Keep on drawing, keep having fun.